in 1973, I was 9 years old. And my big brother, who Annie referenced, he was much older than I was. He was 15 years old when I was born, which means when I was 9, he was 24. He went away to college when I was very young. He didn't move back home after college, so I didn't get to see him very often. Anytime I got to see him was a special occasion. And when he said he was going to take me to a Mets game, that was a very, very special occasion. And when I was 9 years old, he announced that there was a particular date and we were going to go to this particular game. And I was very, very excited. And unfortunately, the weather wasn't really cooperating that day. It was raining, and it was supposed to keep raining. And my brother, whose name is Roy said to me, well, if the game's rained out, we can't go, but if it hasn't been called off, if they haven't suspended or postponed the game, by the time we would normally go, we'll go. And around 1 or 2 in the afternoon, he sat me down in front of one of the radios in our house, my parents' house, and he tuned it to 1010 Wins, which then, as now, was an all-news station, and explained to me, I've never listened to all-news radio before, explained to me that they would do the sports report every half hour, quarter past and quarter up. And he said they'll announce whether the game is still on or whether it's been called off. And if it hasn't been called off by the time we would normally go, we'll go. And this must have seemed like a pretty safe bet for Roy because it was raining really hard. And it was supposed to keep raining. And so throughout the afternoon, every half hour, the same little scenario played out, which was the sports report would come on, and I'd hear the reporter say, and that Mets-Cardinals game is still on. And then a few minutes later, Roy would stick his head in the room and say, so? And I'd say, it's still on. And he'd say, are you sure? It's raining pretty hard, you know. And he'd sort of leave the room kind of muttering and shaking his head. And this went on all day, and I was hearing the same news stories over and over, like you do when you listen to all news radio. Like you hear about the same robbery and the same like politician in hot water, and like the same stories over and over. It's sort of fascinating. I never encountered anything like it. And then 6 or 6:30 came, and the game hadn't been called off, and it was time to go. We lived on Long Island. That's where I grew up, and it was about an hour from our house to Shea Stadium. So Roy put me in the car and strapped me in with the seatbelt, and off we drove with the radio tuned to 1010 just in case they called the game off on the way, which they did not. And we drove the whole way, and my brother parked the car, and he paid for parking, and we had umbrellas, and we walked through the rain to a ticket booth, and he bought us tickets, and we went to a scorecard vendor, and he bought us scorecards, and we went up to our seats. And I can still see it very plainly in my mind's eye, just as we were sitting down. Right there on the scoreboard. Sorry, fans. Game rained out. Now, my brother has a bit of a temper, and I knew that even at 9 years old. It had never been directed at me, but I had seen it. And I kind of felt like he was now going to blow a gasket. And instead, he smiled and he said, this is good. You can learn what a rain check is. And he explained to me that our tickets would be good for another game, and we could trade them in at another time. And even the scorecards, he said, save the scorecard, we'll use that next time too. And we walked back to our car, his car, and we drove home. And we were mostly silent the whole way home. And I was thinking, you know, I knew there wasn't going to be a game. Like, I was 9 years old, but I wasn't stupid. And I was pretty sure Roy knew there wasn't going to be a game. And I knew that he knew there wasn't going to be a game. But he didn't quite know that I knew. And it was that not knowing, that was why we drove the whole way and came back. And so what I learned that day is, I learned how a rain check worked. And in fact, we later traded in those tickets to go to another game. And I have stubs still from that game, which was later in the season, because I saved all my ticket stubs from my childhood. That game was against the Cubs. It was a Cubs game. So I did learn about rain checks. But what I really learned was that my brother would keep his word to me. even when it sort of flew in the face of common sense or rationality, and that certain things, in this case baseball, could put a smile on his face right at the moment when I thought he was going to blow a gasket. So that's my story.
Yeah.